Hi, I'm Matt Bainbridge, current dietetic intern at Bowling Green State University, and today we're going to surf up and stay hydrated. So we're going to talk about how to stay hydrated in the summer, and we're going to go into detail about everything and how to actually drink enough so that we are staying hydrated, because we all want to have fun, we all want to be in the sun, and we all want to actually enjoy the outdoors. So what we're going to get into today is hydration status, dehydration, and maintaining hydration. So the three main topics that we're going to talk about. But first, I want to define hydration. It's the process of providing an adequate amount of liquid to bodily tissues. And to hydrate is to supply water to a person or thing in order to restore or maintain fluid balance. Just wanted to get the definition out there, just so you knew. That's defined by Webster's Dictionary. But what we want to define is our hydration status. So how can we tell if we're hydrated? That's what we're going to talk about. And that's pretty much what hydration status is are you hydrated or are you not hydrated? But to get into this, we're going to first talk about the kidneys and what they do. As we know, the kidneys filter waste, minerals, salt, sugars, and other chemical byproducts. The kidneys also reabsorb sugars. So when we are drinking fluids, it is cycled through the kidneys, and if you're drinking sports drinks or even eating while you're drinking water, those sugars are reabsorbed through the kidneys if they weren't absorbed in the liver. So now that you know that, probably a little bit more information than you actually needed, but just wanted to put that out there. What we really want to look at is our urine color, because our kidneys define what our urine color is. So your urine color defines your hydration status, and it pretty much shows the balance of water in your body based on the color of it. And your urine can change colors based on what you eat, how you hydrate, and rarely medication. If you're on those medications, you should know it. So if you do have some kind of weird colors due to the medications, it's just a side effect. If you want more information, you should definitely talk to your doctor about that. So the first thing I want to talk about is the good. So the good color that you want, the color that you want to actually be urinating, which is straw colored to transparent yellow. You still want that tint of yellow. You don't want it completely clear. We'll get into that. So that's just normal urine color. It's healthy. It shows signs of a well-hydrated body. The other thing is that you can have your urine to be foamy or fizzy on occasion. You don't want this constantly. It's just an indication of a good flow, so if it's every once in a while, that's a good thing. Now, let's get into the bad, which we're going to talk about a little bit more, which I really want you to pay attention to in defining your hydration status. So the first thing I do want to touch on is we don't want transparent or clear colored urine. If it's clear or transparent, that's a sign of overhydration, which we will get into more, but that's just you're taking too much water. Dark yellow indicates the start of dehydration. So this is probably a lot more normal to see. Just a darker colored urine, that's when you do want to you recognize that you do want to start to hydrate. You need to start rehydrating, or else maybe it'll turn to honey colored, which is the first sign of mild dehydration. Then lastly, it's maple syrup colored, which is like a brownish yellow. That's an indicator of severe dehydration or even liver disease. So if your urine is that color, that's definitely a sign of a problem. Next, the next things I want to talk about, I want you to make sure that you do, if these are happening, you want to visit a physician or a urologist, because there could be a lot more associated with why your urine is this color. So first, it's pinkish to reddish. This indicates blood in the urine, which can be a sign of kidney stones or kidney disease, and also cancer of the kidney, bladder, or prostate. So if you're experiencing that, make sure you see a doctor. And then lastly, if you are consistently urinating foamy or fizzy urine, that's a possible sign of protein in the urine, which is not a good thing. That means something either in your liver, or you may be even consuming too much protein. Just something is not right there either. So that's something you can think about with your diet too. It may not be as severe as what I mentioned above, but if you are consistently doing that, definitely talk to your doctor about that as well. So like I said, like we just talked about, Here's an example of the hydration chart. This is actually posted by the Texas Longhorn football coach to provide to his players to make sure that they knew exactly what color their urine should be. That first one may be a little bit too clear for my liking, but it is a good indicator. So charts like these are available online. You just want to make sure that you are getting champion level hydration. So the next way that you can measure your hydration status or monitor it or define it is by measuring sweat loss. And this is a way to measure sweat loss pre-workout, post-workout based on sweat and how much fluid you're losing and how much fluid you're drinking. So we're going to go through all of the steps. So the first step that we want to do, if you are going to do this, is, and if you don't want to do this, if you don't even want to get into this, fast forward a little bit. But we want to weigh our body mass prior to exercise. Ideally, this is done nude. Obviously, that is not the ideal situation. So if you are wearing clothes, you want to make sure they're light, and you do want to make sure that you're wearing the same clothes when you weigh yourself after workout too, which we'll get into. So ideally, you want to weigh yourself first nude, but if you can't, light clothes. And then you also, second, you want to measure the volume of drinks taken during exercises. So you want to measure your water bottle before and at the end of a workout as well. And if you are adding water to your bottle, you want to measure that as well throughout the workout. That's a very detailed step. A lot of people don't do this, so it's okay if you don't. It's really not. You're gonna notice the sweat loss before and after regardless. But for perfectionists, you want to do that. The next step is you want to weigh your body mass before and after using the bathroom during a workout. Because obviously when you're using the bathroom, you're losing fluids, so you want to incorporate that as well. And then lastly, you want to weigh yourself post-workout. You want to make sure you're drying off all your sweat. You want to measure yourself with the same amount of clothes you had on prior to exercise, and then you also want to measure your water bottle like we talked about before. Once you have all of those numbers, this is the formula that you can use, which is you calculate your body mass before minus your body mass after your workout. Then you add the total fluid intake minus the toilet loss. So that'll indicate how much sweat you lost during a workout and also indicate how much water you need to put back into your body. We'll talk about that a little bit more. The next thing I want you to understand is overhydration. Okay, sorry. All right, so now that you know how to calculate that and monitor your hydration status, I really want to talk about dehydration and overhydration. I want you to understand it. I want you to know the signs and symptoms of both of these, and I want you to know how to kind of define it. This will really help out, especially when we do talk about how to actually hydrate yourself. So dehydration is excessive loss of water from the body or from an organ or a body part, as occurs during illness or fluid deprivation. Right now we're not talking about illness. That would be a different topic because we're talking about summer, we're talking about sweating, we're talking about activity. So this is fluid loss during activity during the summertime. So I want you to keep that in mind when we're going over all of this because you may have experienced some of these things in the past. So here's some early warning signs of dehydration, or if you're experiencing multiple symptoms of this would be mild dehydration. So it's thirst, headache, dry mouth, decreased urine output, which is a big one because that also relates to your color of your urine, sleepiness, tiredness, and dizziness. Warning signs of severe dehydration would be extreme thirst, lack of sweat or tears. So if you're not sweating at all, that's not a good thing. You do want to be sweating, and that's not talking about when you're swimming or doing other activities that may cause you to, I guess, dry off your sweat from your body. It's a lack of sweat or tears. So if you are in like a room just like this and you can't sweat, that's a huge sign of severe dehydration. Next is rapid heartbeat, weakness, breathing rapidly, and delirium. If you're experiencing multiple symptoms or even pretty much everything but extreme thirst, because that could be defined by different people. My extreme thirst could be different than yours, but if you are experiencing the lack of sweat, heartbeat, rapid breathing, weakness, and delirium, call 911. The best way to rehydrate yourself would be through IV fluids. So you do want to make sure you are working with a physician, EMT, somebody that can do that for you, a professional. All right, as far as dehydration, I want to talk about sweat loss a little bit more. I know we talked about how to calculate it and a little bit ago, but sweat loss is I feel like the most obvious way to notice dehydration. Sweat loss can occur during any physical activity and any climate of weather, but it is very related to hot weather and also associated with sunburn as well, which is the summertime. The other thing I want you to really keep in mind is that sweat loss can occur even if you don't have visible sweat loss. Now, I know we just talked about sweat loss before with severe dehydration, not being able to sweat. What I'm talking about on this slide is water activities, because when you're in the pool, you don't notice that you're sweat because you're in a pool of water, but you are sweating. So keep that in mind when you are outside and doing all these activities, that you are drinking water and that you are actually sweating. Next, I want to talk about overhydration. And overhydration is excess of water in the body. But you're probably asking, why is overhydration so bad? Remember what I talked about with the transparent to clear colored urine? Well, that's overhydration. And that's not good. That's actually an imbalance of sodium and potassium, because sodium and potassium are huge components of keeping your muscles and your body hydrated. So it's an imbalance of the electrolytes, essentially, from overhydration. So you want to make sure you're not drinking too much. So that's, like I said, well, like we mentioned, making sure your urine's the right color, making sure you are consistently hydrating yourself, but not overhydrating yourself. And like I said, that varies from person to person. Typically, they say that you can always follow the 8x8 rule, which I'll mention again, which is 8 8-ounce fluid glasses of water every day. But obviously for athletes and other people, it could be more. But what overhydration causes is hyponatremia, which is a disruption of natural balance of water and sodium in your blood. It's associated with like ultra endurance sports that last more than 3 to 4 hours, and then also endurance athletes are at greater risk of this because endurance athletes tend to drink as much fluid as they possibly can. The problem with that is consuming large amounts of fluids while losing sodium through sweat, you're going to be imbalanced. So here are the symptoms of hyponatremia: nausea, vomiting, headache and confusion, fatigue, muscle weakness, spasms or cramps, seizure, convulsions, and also coma. Coma, seizures are obviously the very severe version of this. A lot of people tend to overhydrate themselves. It's very easy to do. So what you really should take away from this slide are when you're drinking water, I want you to notice if you are feeling muscle weakness or spasms or cramps, because those are pretty much the main signs of overhydration, or at least the most common, especially that athletes, or when you are outside in the sun doing yard work or whatever it may be. That's kind of what you will experience because it's very easy to do. And this is the last topic I want to talk about under the dehydration/overhydration section, is alcohol and coffee, which are two things that are probably part of your summer. I know they'll probably be part of mine. I'm an adult, you're an adult, so let's talk about this a little bit. So alcohol and coffee are actually examples of mild diuretics. What mild diuretics do, they increase your urine output and it actually pulls water out of the muscle tissues. There's medications that are classified as diuretics, but alcohol and coffee can actually be defined as that as well. So it actually can increase your risk of both dehydration and overhydration, which is why I wanted to talk about it last, because they both tend to dehydrate you. Coffee specifically is more of a dehydration issue, but alcohol, you've probably noticed that transparent colored urine if you've drank a little too much. So that actually does both. You're overhydrated at the time, and then later on, you're dehydrated. So you do want to make sure you are eating properly and hydrating yourself during this period. And so now that we have all that out there, I'm going to actually tell you how to stay hydrated. So how to actually surf up and stay hydrated. So here's some tips for keeping hydrated and things I want you to take away from this. First, our hydration goal. Now, this may seem very simple, but our main goal of hydration is to minimize dehydration without over drinking. Kind of like, so we're pulling everything that we talked about, we're pulling it all together. So here's a list of some tips. I know they're a little lengthy, but definitely take the time to read these tips and on this first slide because they're very basic. So you want to make sure you're drinking fluids all throughout the day, whether you are out in the sun, whether you're exercising or not. It is important to do. Water is the best choice. You want to replace sweat loss by drinking fluids regularly, and you also want to rehydrate after exercise. And like I said before, your actual hydration status and how much water you need is on an individual basis. So that goes back to the 8x8 rule. So it's 8 8-ounce fluid glasses of water a day. It's just a very simple rule, very easy to follow. So that's the average individual. If you are sweating, if you are an athlete, if you do exercise regularly, then that would be a little bit more. But you can calculate that. There's websites available and there's tons of different ways you can calculate your own fluid needs. But the average individual isn't going to do that, and I want to make it easy on you. And that's why we talked about like the signs and symptoms of dehydration and overhydration, because if you know those signs and symptoms, then you don't actually need to know the milliliters or ounces of water that you need to drink, because you know your body. I do want to go a little bit more in depth with maintaining your hydration status. Actually, I take that back. Probably don't need that one. I think that's a repeat. Okay, sorry. So I do want to go a little bit more in depth with hydrating for exercise and fun in the sun. So for short duration workouts or activities, yard work, that are less than 60 minutes, considered to be like low to moderate intensity activity, water is the best choice, and you want to make sure you're drinking water before, during, and after. For sports drinks, because I know that's probably something you've been thinking about this whole time, you typically want to use these for high to moderate levels of activity, lasting longer than 60 minutes to help replace the carbohydrates that you lost, which, like if you remember from our old PowerPoints, carbs are super important, so you do want to replace those. It's not something we're going to get into too deep, but sports drinks do provide those. But mainly, they replace your sodium and your potassium, which helps maintain your hydration status. So the goal is to replace those. If you do experience high sodium losses during exercise, which you may notice that overhydration, that clear urine, like nothing is absorbing in your body. A good tip would be to eat some salty foods pre-exercise, or you can even add salt to sports drinks during your exercise to help your body absorb the actual water, because when salt's in your body, it's in your bloodstream, and your bloodstream carries the H2O, the water, throughout your body. And this is kind of repetitive, but you do want to replace your sodium losses with watery foods that contain salt. So soup, vegetable juice, great examples. And then you also want to replace your potassium, like I mentioned. So fruits and vegetables, super high in potassium. Everybody probably thinks of bananas, but potassium is in all fruits. Make sure you get a variety of those. And to go into a little bit more depth with sports drinks, here's some pictures of the sports drinks. You probably all know Gatorade and Powerade. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm not going to go in the actual science behind all these. That's a different PowerPoint for a different day that can be argued, and that's not something worth talking about. This is something I want you to just know. So Powerade and Gatorade typically tend to be higher in sugar, and sugar is not always necessarily the best thing for you. So I want you to be aware of these, I guess, alternatives to Gatorade that are also sports drinks that may help hydrate you a little bit better. So the first one that's up there that I want to talk to you about is Pedialyte. And you're probably thinking, that's crazy, why would I drink Pedialyte? That's for kids. Well, think about it. When a kid is sick, dehydrated, diarrhea, we give them Pedialyte. Pedialyte has been shown in studies to be more effective than Gatorade because of the sodium and the potassium balances in the Pedialyte. So it'll help rehydrate your body a little bit quicker. Obviously, not everybody likes the taste of Pedialyte. Not everybody would want to do that, but I just want to throw that idea out there. Next thing is there are electrolyte powder mixes that are available. You can get these at pretty much any grocery store. You just mix them in your water. And then the last two things I want to talk about are coconut water, because there's a lot of new products out there that are coconut water based that have like pretty much the perfect balance of potassium and sodium in them to help hydrate you a lot quicker and a lot better. They don't necessarily have the carbohydrate value to them, they don't have the sugars in them, but they do have that hydration component. So there's two products that I have posted up here. The first one is Numa. Numa is actually based out of Shaker Heights. It was developed by two hockey players, I believe. I hope I'm not wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure there are two hockey players that developed this drink, and it's coconut water based, but it's balanced out so that it hydrates you a lot better during exercise activity. Anything that can cause dehydration, sweating in the sun, sunburn. So that's also available, and I'm pretty sure a lot of Giant Eagles in this area, since I am speaking to clients that are based in Beechwood. Giant Eagle's pretty much, I think, the only place in this area that may carry it consistently, but definitely worth a Google. And the next one I want to point out is Villager, which is just a brand of coconut water. It's just straight coconut water, but it is also higher in potassium and sodium. I haven't compared the two, Numa and like your average coconut water, but coconut water is just another good option. But as we know, the best choice is water. We want to drink water gradually throughout the day. There's little things that you can do by making sure that you carry water bottles on you, making sure that you're constantly stopping at the water cooler depending on where you work. You do want to provide your family with water. Water is just great. It's just the best thing for you, honestly. No calories, no side effects. Gotta love water. So that is how you surf up and stay hydrated. Go Cavs.